Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sawadee-kap, and a very good morning. Learned members of the academia, faculty staff and students of Prince Songkhla University, Pattani campus, excellencies, distinguished guests, social activists from civil societies, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, allow me to express my sincere appreciation to Prince Songkhla University, Pattani campus, or in short PSU, in particular to Assistant Professor Dr. Sisompop Git Piromsri, Director of the Center for Conflict Studies and Cultural Diversity, CSCD, PSU, for extending an invitation to me to deliver a keynote address at this esteemed university in conjunction with a conference organized by CSCD entitled Third Pattani Peace Media Day and Peace Assembly of 2016, Peace Moving Forward. I consider it an honor to be again invited to this distinguished university to address a forum of distinguished and learned audience. Regrettably, because of clash of schedule, I'm unable to attend this conference and personally deliver my speech. Nonetheless, despite not being physically present, my spirit is with all of you present today at the conference. Let me also take this opportunity to congratulate and thank PSU, particularly CSCD, for the noble effort of actively promoting awareness among the general public of the issue of the conflict in Pattani. This is in view of the fact that the issue of the conflict in Pattani is not the monopoly of any particular group or groups, but belongs to all stakeholders, including the general public in Pattani. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to speak on facilitating the peace dialogue, challenges and next steps. Before I proceed further, for purposes of consistency and that we are on the same page of the geographical area that we will be discussing, allow me to borrow the term used by PSU in the invitation letter to me. Instead of using the term South Thailand or Southern Thailand or Southern border provinces to refer to the affected areas of discussion, i.e. the provinces of Pattani, Yala and Narathiwat, and the 4 areas in the province of Songkhla, I would instead use the term Pattani with the word T, with the letter T as used in the letter. In this regard, over the course of my speech, I may refer the term Pattani conflict, problem, issue, etc. interchangeably to refer to our topic of discussion. I would like to clarify the present dialogue process of the Pattani conflict as that of round 2. Round 1 started with the signing of the MOU between the representative of the government of Thailand and the BRN on the 28th of February 2013, and today may be considered as the 3rd anniversary of the dialogue process. We cannot deny the fact that the decision by the then Prime Minister of Thailand, Honorable Yingluck Shinawatra, to start the peace dialogue was significant because it was the first time after 7 Thai governments since 2004 to publicly acknowledge the need for a political solution to the most violent conflict in Southeast Asia. It was a brave decision indeed, despite the serious consequences. The BRN's decision to come out of the shadows into the open, at least for some of its representatives, was also commendable, indicating that it was willing to finding an amicable solution other than through armed struggle. After 4 rounds of the so-called official meetings, round 1 was short-lived due to some unforeseen circumstances. Nonetheless, I believe that some progresses were made. The one that stands out most was the fact that if both parties were to sit down together and discuss, they could actually agree and achieve certain understanding despite their vast differences and antagonism. I consider round 2 started when His Excellency General Prayut Chan-o-cha, the current Thai Prime Minister, met Malaysian Prime Minister His Excellency Dato Najib Razak in Kuala Lumpur on 1st December 2014, where he stated his commitment to the dialogue process and that Malaysia is to continue to act as facilitator. At the same meeting, both leaders agreed on 3 points. 1, that all stakeholders in the conflict must be involved. 2, that there must be a common or unified demand, and 3, violence must be reduced. The commitment given by His Excellency General Prayut quashed all speculations that the new military government was not interested in finding a solution at the negotiating table. Since the start of round 2, both parties have had 4 unofficial meetings. 2 technical committee meetings were also held to specifically discuss the terms of reference for future conduct of the dialogue process. One significant unofficial meeting was between the head of dialogue panel of the government of Thailand and the leaders of 6 armed groups active in Pattani, namely the BRN, 3 Pulau factions, BIPP and GIMP. From the discussions during the unofficial meetings, it was obvious the road ahead to achieve a lasting peace is very bumpy indeed. To start with, I could sense there is still a high level of mistrust of each other's sincerity and commitment towards the process by both parties. On the part of the government, though it recognized BRN's major role in the conflict, there may still be lingering doubts as to whether those representing the BRN, particularly Awan Jabat, has the full mandate of the organization. Another issue is whether the armed groups, including the BRN, could control those actively involved in the violent incidents in Pattani. On the part of the armed groups, because of their past experiences, they find difficulty to put their trust on the commitment of the government. As the present military government is temporary in nature, the armed groups is asking whether this dialogue process is for real. Their main question is whether the next government that takes over will honor the commitment and agreement that will be made by the present government. Or is it just another attempt to deceive and expose the leaders, as it happened in the past initiatives? Although both parties were talking about wanting to have peace, each other's view to the process of achieving peace is poles apart. This is what Johann Galtung, the father of peace studies, refers to the concept of negative peace versus positive peace. The government's connotation of peace is that the BRN and other groups must cease acts of violence before the government will concede to their demands. On the other hand, the BRN is insisting that the government must deliver and grant them with their demands before they would cease acts of violence. It is therefore the function and duty of the facilitator to ensure that both parties could come to a meeting point where peace could be established. Another stumbling block in this initial stage of the dialogue process is the level of coordination on both sides. Though this problem is not that serious as compared to the situation in round 1, it however may affect the effectiveness of whatever understandings that may have been agreed upon in the future. On the part of the armed groups, though the level of cooperation between them has improved, there are still elements within each armed group that may not only be unsympathetic, but more importantly, totally against the dialogue process and would pursue to sabotage it. I strongly support the idea that public debate and awareness of the conflict should be encouraged. Nonetheless, negotiating through the media and publicly may be a stumbling block and negative impact to the process of the dialogue process. It is noticed that there are too many experts have emerged and not only publicly expressed their views, but unfortunately sometimes information that much of the time were inaccurate and misleading were made. There are also many personalities who want to be recognized as leaders and claim to be speaking on behalf of their respective groups, though in reality they do not have the authority to do so. These have aroused uneasiness and misunderstandings between both parties. A very significant development that has evolved during round 2 is the formation of Majlis Shura Raya Pattani or MARA, an umbrella organization that is supposed to comprise all stakeholders in the Pattani conflict. There have been questions and skepticisms on the part of many, including the government, as whether the present chairman of MARA, Awan Jabat from BRN, has the full support and mandate of BRN. Issues have been raised that MARA is not inclusive, as at the moment it only comprises of representatives of the major factions of the armed group. There have been doubts as to the effectiveness of MARA. Foremost is the fact that Mara has yet to be recognized by the government of Thailand as the sole representative of the stakeholders in the Pattani conflict. Without this recognition, those currently steering Mara has little legitimacy to claim that they are representing the stakeholders of Pattani, thus rendering them ineffective. As I mentioned above, the formation of Mara is a very significant development in the dialogue process. This is because it not only brings all major armed factions together under one umbrella organization, but also important is to involve all other stakeholders in the Pattani conflict. This is in line with the view of both PM Prayut and PM Najib that all stakeholders must be involved. What is most significant in this development is that for the first time in the history of the Pattani conflict, it has been publicly accepted, particularly by the armed groups, most notably by BRN, that the issue is not the monopoly of any group, but it is an issue of the people of Pattani. At the moment, the Central Committee of Mara comprises only representatives of the armed groups, and the Secretariat is awaiting the non-armed groups to fill in the quota. As to whether Ustad Awan Jabat has a full mandate or is a real leader of the BRN or otherwise, the Secretariat is of the view that he is the best available BRN leader that has agreed to come out in public to initiate the process. Moreover, Ustad Awan Jabat has made it publicly known that he is willing to and will step aside if there is a better and more capable BRN personality who wants to come out in the open and take over the helm of Mara. There have also been suggestions that the BRN is not supportive of, or worse, is against Mara and the dialogue process. I would like to present a different view. I accept the fact that not everybody in Bahrain supports Mara and the dialogue process. However, the personalities that are in the dialogue panel and the Central Committee of Mara are, to our knowledge, senior members of Bahrain leadership. I don't think I should wait for everybody to agree before proceeding with the dialogue process, as I think it would not be in the interest of the stakeholders in the Pattani conflict. My task is to move on and believe that those fence-sitters and even those who have been against the idea of a dialogue would be encouraged to join once they see progress have been made through the process. Despite these obstacles and problems, I am optimistic that there is light at the end of this dialogue process tunnel. For one, with the commitment given by General Prayut, the present military government may be able to deliver certain things that the normal civilian government is unable to do so. For a start, I've been made to understand that the government has agreed to adopt this dialogue process as a national agenda, a demand that has been put forward by the armed groups even during round one. Though very little have been made known or published as to what have been achieved, I may confess here that it has been very encouraging indeed. Both parties, despite their differences and disagreements on a number of issues, have given their commitment and assurances to the peace dialogue. This constant communication between the two sides through the facilitator helped to erase misunderstanding. We have to accept the fact that much of the time of the past few months have been spent by both sides to try to create confidence and a better understanding not only of each other but also of the issues at hand. We should acknowledge and accept the fact that this dialogue process is still in an embryonic or early stage. Conflict resolution is a very complex process and depends on a number of factors. There is therefore a need for all stakeholders to be involved. In this regard, I would like to urge and encourage all NGOs, CSOs, organizations in Pattani, be it women, religious, youth, academics, and all those who think they have a stake in the Pattani conflict to come forward and meet, discuss, resolve, and state your coordinated stand on the dialogue process and as to how it should proceed. I would also like to urge you to elect your representatives to represent you at the Mara Central Committee to synchronize your demands and aspirations with those of the armed groups. Only then you will be able to get yourself directly involved and be represented in the dialogue process and Mara be truly representative of the people of Tani. As I mentioned earlier, you are part of Mara and should therefore participate and being represented. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia's appointment as a facilitator for the peace dialogue has not gone well with certain quarters, with some accusing that Malaysia is not the right intermediary because it has an agenda. In his keynote address at the Symposium on Islam and New Era of ASEAN Countries, Unity of Worldview Towards a Shared Prosperity, at the Institute of Islamic Standing Malaysia on 4th June 2013, Dato Sri Najib clearly refutes any suggestion that Malaysia has a hidden agenda of helping the related provinces. On the other hand, Malaysia would like to extend a helping hand and be an honest broker. As a neighbor, we have obligations, responsibilities towards Thailand, but we also have our rights and interests that should be taken into consideration by Thailand. Does Malaysia has an agenda? I would certainly say yes. Malaysia's agenda is to help broker a comprehensive, everlasting, and just agreement between the government of Thailand and the affected parties and stakeholders in Pattani. I would also like to stress here that this comprehensive, everlasting, and just agreement should not only be for the benefits and interests of the people of Thailand, the affected areas and parties in Pattani, but also for that of Malaysia. Malaysia has also stressed that it is the prerogative of the government of Thailand and the stakeholders in the affected areas to choose whichever country they would like to help them facilitate in solving the problem. Malaysia's only concern is that Malaysia's interests should also be considered in any resolution to the conflict. This is because of its close proximity to the Pattani area. However, Malaysia would like to stress that we are ever ready to play whatever role the parties concerned would like us to be. And we will undertake that responsibility and perform it to our utmost ability so long as it is not against our national interests. As I stood on this platform 2 years ago, I would like to stress my optimism that there is future in the dialogue process of the conflict in Pattani. Before I leave, may I take this opportunity to wish all of you a successful and enlightened meeting, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings on those participating in the conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you.